and overwhelming evidence. Also, the prosecution had survivor testimony from Randy's rapes and murders attempt. The prosecution had Lisa Garcia testify against Randy, and it was pretty key to putting him away. She faced him and pointed out her attacker on the stand, recalling her horrible encounter with Randy 5 months earlier. And I probably don't have to say, but it must take a really, really strong person to face your rapist, shooter in court and point him out.
Whitfield's defense. His defense, or what defense he had, was underwhelming. They went with the mistaken identity defense.
It wasn't his porn mustache. It was someone else's porn mustache.
Hey, early 80s, a lot of people had the porn mustaches. It could be anybody. But on the stand, Randy was soft-spoken. He never admitted his guilt. He did say that he owned a .32 caliber pistol, but when he realized felons were not allowed to own guns, he threw it in a river.
Makes sense.
Sentence. On June 26, 1981, after 3.5 hours of jury deliberation, Whitfield was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to life plus 90 years.
For sodomy.
90 years for sodomy. And that's why they do it. Because life in American court could mean 10 years, 20 years. In October 1981, he had a second trial in Benton County for the attacks in a restaurant bathroom with more sodomy and weapons charges. He received an additional 35-year sentence. Whitfield is serving life in Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem. He is now 69 years old. Ironically, not even 1 mile away from I-5. In 1987, April, Whitfield tried to sue Ann Rule for her book, The I-5 Killer, for $12 million on the charge of libel. The book was a bestseller. The Federal Court of Oregon dismissed his suit in 1988.
Obviously, there are links to so many other crimes, rapes, and murders that he hasn't been charged with, most likely because he's already in prison and the states don't want to waste resources on someone who is already put away. One, for example, was Martha Morrison, who went missing in Oregon in September of 1975. Her remains were found a month later near Washington. She could be a victim of Whitfield or Ted Bundy. She was not identified until 2015. So yeah, that doesn't really fit his MO. He more like shot people and just left them there. He didn't really even bother to hide the bodies. He was kind of a disorganized killer, unlike Ted Bundy, who was very organized.
And actually, it's pretty common for courts to not try necessarily all the cases. If they believe the perpetrator is going to be locked up for life, they're not going to spend the money, because trials are expensive, to prosecute them. But if they did get any kind of word or sense that Randy would be released at any point in his life, they would go ahead and proceed with those cases.
In 1990, more victims were found. Whitfield could be responsible for 44 murders and as many as 60 unsolved sexual assaults. In 2001 and 2006, DNA testing linked Whitfield to 2 murders from 1980 and 1981. Wow.
Guaranteed it's a lot more than that. That number's probably much higher.
In 2012, the Portland's Cold Case Unit found Whitfield responsible, linking him through DNA to Fix, Jarvis, Eckerd, Altig, and Reitz. Police already suspected his connection, but it was now confirmed with DNA evidence.
So this is nearly 20 years after the crime. The quality of DNA testing was now to a point where they could link him to those cases.
Whitfield has been questioned in prison with the hope he would confess to further unsolved crimes. A former Portland cold case investigator named Weatheroy said about Randy, quote, "I remember his hair was perfect, feathered and combed. He had a perfectly even tan, his nails were manicured, he was very charismatic, which made sense because he would lure victims and get them to let their guard down." Unquote. Whitfield to this day will not confess to anything more than what he was charged with. He has zero remorse And if he won't acknowledge his behavior, then he obviously doesn't feel responsible or guilty about it. Of course, we are always left with the why question. There are no easy answers. I've learned from writing and researching these killers' stories. It's usually a combo of many, many things that end up becoming a trigger for a serial killer. But in the end, they make that choice to commit murder. So you could say that something happened to him in his younger years that made him connect sex and violence, but I don't really think that ever happened to him. He had a really good childhood. He was loved. He just couldn't take no for an answer and did whatever he wanted.
Maybe this is one of those cases where pornography would have been a better option for him.
I'm not going to touch that. Of course, you have your football excuse. Sometimes a violent sport might create a violent man, or maybe a few concussions caused his impulse control problems. But it seems like he was doing those things from a very early age, so that doesn't really fit either. In reality, he was showing troubling behavior from a very early age. And then, when football was gone, football was actually the only thing holding him back from becoming a monster because he had a purpose in life. And there's also the theory that his older sisters were very domineering and his mother was a perfectionist, and that is what made him resent women. And that seems pretty far-fetched to me also. He just wanted to. That's it. He just took what he wanted.
And if I had to guess, even if he had made the Packers, he eventually would have committed some crimes anyway.
Yes.
Some interesting facts. Randy's been married 3 times and divorced 2 times while in prison. In 2006, he joined MySpace.
Ooh.
Remember that?
Yes.
I wonder how young these viewers are. How many had a MySpace page?
Let us know. I had a MySpace page.
Yeah.
And I always had Christian Bale on it. And I always had emo music playing. Always. Do you remember yours? It was probably Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, most likely just a playlist of
a picture of a guitar.
Guns N' Roses. That's it. Randy's MySpace profile said, "I spend the remainder of my days in prison because I committed a murder along with many other crimes. I once tried out for the Green Bay Packers. The only reason I didn't make it is because the skills I offer they didn't need at the time."
Oh my God, that's pathetic. That makes me actually feel bad for him that he's that pathetic.
That was traumatic. I'm sure it was traumatic. Anybody who's made it that close to that profession, it never worked out. Some people chase that dream and just can't deal with it.
So that's the end of the I-5 Killer podcast. Thank you for listening. And listen to the end of the podcast because we're going to give a shout out to all the patrons and some reviews. Thanks, guys. And thank you to Casey.
You're welcome.
My partner in crime.
Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
I want to thank my new patrons, Battle Axe Bunting, who is a Podbean donator, Cassie Reedus, True Crime Nana, Whitney Taylor, Joseph Johnson, Mary, Blue by Nature, and of course, there's the OGs, Greg Gallagher, Kaylee Lyons, who is the Murderific mascot, by the way, Nicolette Killman, Fried Wizard, Angela Clinkscales, Marion Rod, Casey Kucher, Danica Dutil, Ainsley Vanderbosch, and of course, Aaron from Devil We Know podcast, War Baby from Murderous Minors, and Uncovered the podcast. If you don't hear your name, it's because I record ahead of time, and you will hear on the next one or the one after that. Thank you so much for contributing to Murderific. You are helping me create content, and you're the producers, so thank you. And now for some iTunes reviews. One from Naptime Nancy Drew. Great show, great host, well-researched. What more do you want? Subscribe and binge today. And Lego Man 65. I listen to a ton of murder podcasts, and so far yours is by far the best. Don't stop the very well-placed language that you insert. It really helps to make the show. Love you and what you do to entertain me, Richard. Thank you, Richard. And EEC, as a Maine girl myself who also loves true crime, this is my new obsession. Love the content, and especially Bernadette. Can't wait to keep listening. Thank you so much for your reviews, guys. Just so everyone knows, I do know that episode 23 didn't sound the best compared to the other podcasts, but there was some sort of technical issues recording that episode. So I am aware of that. So thank you for letting me know. Please subscribe to Murderific True Crime Podcast on iTunes or where you listen to podcasts. Please leave a rating and an honest review for Murderific True Crime Podcast. Support Murderific by going to Murderific on Patreon and contributing. It will help with website and production costs, and you'll also be helping a small business to continue. Your contribution, even $1 a month, will keep us going. The links to contribute are also on murderific.com. Follow me on social media, on Twitter as Murderific BPC or Instagram at Murderific Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Murderific True Crime Podcast. Until next time, we'll be executing podcasts one crime at a time.
If you're going to do something, do it well. And leave something with you. Leave a sign to let the world know that you were there. Have a good day.
Is your true crime podcast obsession giving you anxiety and nightmares? Are murder-centric thoughts leaving you on edge every time you're home alone? Holistic Hemp Healing's all-natural premium CBD products give me relief from my anxiety and have allowed me to sleep soundly without visions of unsolved murders waking me up hour after hour. You can try their CBD products for 20% off just being a Murderific podcast listener. They have tinctures, soaps, and edibles. www.holistichemp.life. Use promo code Murderific at checkout for 20% off all of their products.
So, Matt, what rhymes with boo and stinks?
Wait, poo?
Nope, you.
Oh, man. God, I walked into that.
Yeah, you did.
Good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, here we are again. So, real quick, before we get into this tonight, now Matt normally talks about this at the end of every episode, but I wanted to hit you guys up at the start of it. So, we always say this, but this is not just us saying this for our ego purposes, but if you could, on whatever format you listen to us, give us a review. You know, go click the 5-star and type a little something. It's not for our ego, I promise you. That's to help us gain in the charts there so people see us and we can get more people into the graveyard. It's just how that algorithm works. I don't know why, but help us out and do that.
It's for my ego.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I wasn't saying that we don't have fragile egos, because it does help our ego, but that's not
mine's not fragile. You know?
Oh, well, says you.
I'm pretty tough. You know, I can take it.
Sure. But yeah,
just kidding. Just kidding. Be nice.
Yeah, be nice. If you could give us a review, that helps us grow in iTunes or whatever format that you listen to us. Now, we know that some of them don't have a space for reviews, and that's fine if they don't. But if they do, log in and give us a review, and you don't even have to write anything long. You can just tell us about your day if you want to. That's fine. It doesn't matter. We just we could use a little boost there of reviews. Also, if you aren't a patron, you might consider it, because we've started adding more and different things to our Patreon episodes. We're doing a Getting Personal thing now, where we kind of catch up and let you guys in on what's going on behind the scenes and everything, while Matt and I kind of catch up on what's going on, since we're now in 2 different states. So you get to hear
listen to all the crap that we talk about before we actually start recording.
Exactly.
It's not the show, believe it or not.
Yeah. It's everything but the show is what we talk about. And then the episodes that we do on a topic, it's a different topic than our normal Graveyard Tales topics. We may hit on true crime occasionally. We'll hit on, weird lists that we find on the interwebs that we find funny.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. So if you're interested, you can go over to our website, graveyardpodcast.com, and there's a button to take you over to Patreon, and you can sign up. For as little as $1, you can get everything we've got there. So, Matt, let's get into it. What are we talking about tonight?
Okay, tonight we are going to discuss a fairly interesting phenomena that
phenomena.
yeah, that has puzzled scientists and researchers for a really long time, but mostly over about the last 60 years or so. We're going to talk about telekinesis or psychokinesis. The terms are used interchangeably, but we're talking about the ability to move stuff with the power of your mind. And I just moved a skull behind Adam, and he doesn't know it yet, but from Tennessee to Texas, I moved it like a millimeter to the left. So when he notices it, he's going to be irritated.
The only way I'm going to notice that is because the dust that I have not cleaned up around it will be a little bit disturbed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's how it works at my house.
Right. That's
Who
how
moved this.
Yeah.
Because it's clean right here.
That's how I know if Michael's been fiddling around in the graveyard here, is the dust is disturbed a little bit.
So telekinesis. So I think you say that word, and I think most people know what you mean. But we're going to kind of give you a little bit of a definition of what it is. So Adam, why don't you tell us what telekinesis is?
All right. I was hoping I would have a joke worked up for that delivery after you said that, but I've got nothing, so I'm just going to be serious, and we're going to talk about it.
All right, you be serious.
All right, I'm going to try to be serious.
This is Adam being serious.
This is me being serious. So telekinesis and psychokinesis are defined as the ability to move or manipulate objects at a distance with only your mental powers. So pretty simple. It's manipulating what's in the physical world with just the powers of your mind. Now, the word telekinesis was first used in 1890 by a Russian researcher and spiritualist, Alexander Aksakov. And I think I pronounced that right, but Aksakov, Aksakov.
Yeah, we're going to go with it.
Yep.
I like it.
Though he attributed more to ghostly activity than psychic phenomena, Aksakov organized seances and wrote books on paranormal powers, as well as conducted research with prominent mediums of the time. Well, the term psychokinesis was perpetuated by parapsychology researcher J.B. Rhine in the early 20th century. But he didn't really invent the word, he just kind of used it a lot, so it became in people's vernacular more. Now, Rhine wrote books on ESP and other aspects of parapsychology. He conducted experiments on psychokinesis in the 1930s, testing his subjects' ability to affect the outcome of a pair of thrown dice. And you've probably seen or heard of this study that he did. Well, some of his results were mildly impressive, and the experiment as a whole at least showed statistical promise. Well, later in the 70s, German researcher Helmut Schmidt would perform similar experiments, putting psychokinesis to the test using random number generators. Schmidt, too, decided his subjects were exerting at least some effect over the outcome of the numbers, suggesting a 1 to 2% success rate beyond chance alone. So that's not much, but it's something. It's showing that 1 to 2% more than chance, these people are affecting the outcome of the random number generator. Well, throughout the 20th century, similar tests were held, some showing, quote, impressive results, indicating that psychokinesis is a real ability possessed by at least some people. Some of the most extensive work had been done at Princeton University at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory. That's a mouthful. I wouldn't want to work there because I would have to say that all the time.
Places that Adam won't work because the name's too dadgum long.
But, right. That's why I work at podcast now. I can say that,
Well, I like to work places that have like cool initials.
Well, I was just thinking of that. This one is the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, so you could call it Peril. P-E-A-R-L, Peril.
Oh, well, there you go. See, when you started with the P-E, I was really scared of where you were going to go next.
Princeton Engineering Normal Industry.
Exactly. Imagine having that on your shirt,
Right.
Where do you work? Don't ask.
You put your hand over the name tag on your shirt. All right. That took a turn that tickled my funny bone. All right. So, in experiments conducted from 1979 to 2007, Princeton researchers found minute but tangible results when measuring the psychokinetic abilities of subjects. But, is it possible? That's the big question that we have tonight. Is telekinesis and psychokinesis a thing that people can really do?
God, I hope so.
Me too.
Because I want to learn how to be able to tie my shoes without bending over.
Dude, there's a lot of stuff I want to learn how to do without getting up. If I can do stuff without having to get my lazy butt up off the sofa, I'm good.
Well, look, imagine the person that was given the first remote control television.
Oh, dude.
You mean I don't have to get up and walk over there?
Yep.
How awesome is this?
I don't have to go click, click,
I'm
click, click.
I'm telekinetic.
Yeah, right.
I'm television kinetic.
There you go. Maybe that's where the word comes from. The guy who invented the remote controlled TV came up with that.
That's right. The first telekinetic television.
Yeah. No, dude, it's not telekinetic. It's a remote. Yeah, call it telekinetic. It's fine.
But what if I stick it on my head? Then I'm doing it with my mind.
I'm punching the buttons with my nose. All right. So I found an article from Psychology Today that I wanted to read because I think it. Go with me. This will explain this. You've got to put your thinking cap on. This is going to be a little bit headier than we normally do. But I think it's a really great study and a really great paper that was written. It says, in the unimaginably weird world of subatomic particles such as electrons, individual particles exist in many places at the same time. Now, that seems impossible, but experiment after experiment over the last 100 years have proven it to be true beyond a shadow of a doubt. In fact, if you're listening to us on a computer or whatever, the computer is basically a whole bunch of electronic parts called transistors. Each and every one of those transistors would not function unless electrons existed in multiple places at once. It's a bizarre phenomenon called quantum superposition. So they asked the question, what does quantum superposition have to do with telekinesis? Well, particles like electrons don't always live in any particular place, but in a sort of smear.
What, like Einstein bagels?
Yes, like you smear it on the bagel.
Yeah.
So, in some sort of smear of many places, most very close to each other, some very far away. Another way of putting it is that some tiny packets of matter are slightly everywhere, but precisely nowhere. So this means that many electrons in the room you're sitting in right now, like those in your computer, exist in the computer and inside your brain. Now, what happens inside your brain every time you think? Electric currents flow and electromagnetic fields are created that exert influence on electrons, including those that occupy spaces inside and outside of your head. Now, when you push or pull on an electron with an electric field, like an electron in static electricity accumulating on your dog's fur, that electron moves a little. When that happens to an electron that occupies many spaces at the same time, it will experience what physicists call a collapse. Well, a collapse is sort of like what happens when a shepherd gathers in his scattered sheep at the end of the day, but with one slight difference. If the different sheep in a flock were like the quantum stages of a single electron, the shepherd would have to send his sheepdog out to wouldn't have to send his sheepdog out to consolidate the animals. He would just tap on the nearest sheep. Then instantly, and faster than the speed of light, all but one of the sheep would vanish, leaving just one to be guided into the enclosure at night. So
well, wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Right? So the shepherd's tap is an analogy for what you do to the many states of an electron when you generate an electrical field with your thoughts. You cause multiple simultaneous incarnations of that particle to collapse into occupying one particular space. And that place can be inside your brain, somewhere in the room you're sitting in, or 14 billion light years away on the far side of the universe. And it says, you heard me right. When I said that electrons started off slightly everywhere, I meant everywhere. And it says, now buckle your seatbelt because this is where things get really wild. As if that wasn't wild enough.
I was going to say, wait.
If particles are slightly everywhere and precisely nowhere, then some particles that make up you are inside of you at the same time that they exist on the opposite side of the universe. So that's a little weird. But so what? Well, a quantum tap that originates on the far side of the universe, say an exploding star, could cause a collapse inside your skull. So your thoughts move the universe outside you just a little bit, and the universe moves you. So do you actually feel the infinitesimal activity going on? Can one person sense a quantum change in their brain caused by a quantum change in someone else's brain? It says almost certainly not. But almost is not the same as certain, is it? So that was the end of the article. But I want to say, think of it this way. Since objects in every place at the same time, you know, there's an object here and an object there, basically the particles of it. Why could that tap that they're talking about for the shepherd that creates the collapse not happen within your brain and cause all forms of, say, this skull in front of me to move to the left into that space that it was occupying just to the left that I couldn't see until I generated it with my brain? So you do, under this theory that they're talking about, you do have the ability to affect things outside of your brain just by thinking about it, due to the quantum superposition that they were talking about. Now, that's a little heady, but it's basically, it's science giving credence to something that we wouldn't think that they would give credence to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think we have to be careful here because it's giving credence to the theory. It's not necessarily giving credence to the practice of it.
Sure.
And of course, we're talking about things on a subatomic scale.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about a macro scale here that occurs within a visible range of movement either.
Sure. Yeah, because we're talking about one particle, not a collection of particles that make up something.
Right. So we're talking about one particle of billions of particles that would make up the pen that's laying on Adam's desk. And then that many particles, you being able to affect them with your thought and actually move them across a distance that would actually be observable by the human eye.
Right.
So, I mean, again, theoretically, maybe. But, I mean, again, we're talking about almost apples and oranges. This is the size difference is so immense for this to even be possible. But yet there's evidence out there that it has been done and could be done.
Right.
So,
and like you said, I wouldn't go as far as apples and oranges, but I would say that what we're discussing with the quantum superposition is the very beginning of understanding how it could work.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So
I'll concede that point.
So once we figure that part out, that we can affect one particle, then we're just going to
magnify it a lot.
Right. It's many steps to the final product, but it is a step in the ladder of understanding how telekinesis and psychokinesis could be something that people could have or could learn. And that's the thing too, that has to be studied. Is it a learned ability? Is it something you're born with? Is it something that we all could do at one point? Like I've thought about some other things, and you and I have talked about before. Our brains used to be able to do a lot of different things that we can't now because of our evolution. We've lost some traits of the mind, and I'm trying to be a little vague because I think we're going to get into some of this in the next episode as well. But, our brains could do a lot more than we can now because we've forgotten or we've lost that ability.
I'll tell you something that my brain used to be able to do very well and can no longer do. And that's remember a stinking phone number.
No kidding, right?
I mean, I know maybe 3 phone numbers. And the other day, I was writing my phone number down and I just automatically wrote a phone number I had like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did that come from?
Right. But that's a great analogy.
It's a funny thing, but because of over history, the progression of, in this case, technology, humans have evolved away from needing to do that.
Exactly.
So we no longer do it. And without, it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. And I mean it as a joke, but it's an absolute truth, where, if it's not something that you have to do, then you quit doing it and you lose the ability unless you make a conscious effort to do it.
Right.
And so this kind of stuff we can go back to 2 episodes that we discussed certain phenomena like this, and I think of remote viewing and the out of body experience, where the people that are relating these stories have an attitude toward it that this is not something that I was gifted with. I'm not special because I was born with this ability to do so. I practiced it. I focused, and I taught myself that I could do it, and you can too.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
That it's a part of the universe that some people have tapped into. Not everybody has tapped into. But it's one of those things that if you're closed-minded to it, you'll never be able to do it. You'll never be able to experience that. You somehow have to open up your consciousness to the universe and allow the ability to kind of just take over.
Right.
And I guess that in a nutshell, that's what Adam is saying. You know, if we can wrap our head around the subatomic ability for this to even be possible, then we're taking that first step towards saying, okay, then we can magnify this.
Right.
If we can do it at this level, why can't we do it at a much larger scale?
Yep. Exactly right.
And you know, if you can get behind that idea, then maybe you're ready to tie your shoes without touching them. So
yeah, right. Brush your teeth without getting out of bed.
Man, I don't know if I really want to do that. But I'd love to be able to load the dishwasher without getting over there.
Yeah. No kidding, right?
I think very small, mundane things that I want to be able to do with my telekinetic ability. I'm not out there crushing cars or, you know, changing the trajectory of nuclear weapons, nothing like that.
Well, wouldn't that be great? I'm doing
housework that I don't want to do.
Right. But wouldn't that be great for like traffic? You saying cars, if you're sitting in traffic and you could telekinetically move people out of your way and create a lane just for you to go, I would love that. But again, like what we were saying, the use it or lose it thing, with the advent of cars and airplanes and things that do your dishes like a dishwasher and all that, we've, lost the need to use telekinetic powers or anything like that. So our brain left it behind. It's like one of those senses that they say we have, that humans inherently have the ability to detect magnetic fields like dogs and birds and stuff. But because we don't use that anymore, that part of our brain, one of our senses, is gone. And only a few people in the world can detect electromagnetic fields in such a way, or our hearing, because we don't have to hear things in the forests and the plains to keep us safe. Our hearing has degraded, so we don't hear quite like we used to. Again, telekinesis could be one of those abilities.
Yeah, if I don't have to worry about a lion coming into my hut that's going to eat me, and I have to listen and be alert, then I can barely hear, something going on across the room now.
Right.
I'll stop making any age joke.
Dadgummit.
I mean, that's legit. I mean, much like when we're talking about, someone who has lost one of their senses, namely, well, let's say, for example, someone who is totally blind. They have to rely on other senses. So those other senses become heightened because they need them. They rely on them, and those senses aren't dulled by using, your sense of sight, as opposed to hearing and touch and things like that. I mean, so all of these things we know are factual. We're not telling you anything that's magic. I mean, the fact that, someone who's blind has a better sense of touch and smell and hearing, that's not new. We know that exists. And we realize that, as humans, we have lost abilities to do certain things because we no longer have to, also not a big surprise. So, but it goes to Adam's point. What else have we lost the ability to do that we're not fully aware of?
Hi, I'm Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Jeremy. And when we're not checking our closet for monsters, we're hosting a paranormal comedy podcast. It's called According to an Idiot.
Do you want a disturbing tale you can tell all your friends around a campfire, and everyone wants to invite you to their campfires because they know you as the cool campfire tale guy? Well, guess what? We got good news for you.
Each episode, we explore the unexplained.
Conspiracy theories.
Urban legends.
Cryptids.
Scary ghosts.
I mean, I'll teach you something for sure. Is it useful? No. But you'll know some fun party facts.
However, if you're listening to our podcast, you probably aren't invited to a lot of parties.
That's very true.
So if you like getting scared, put us in your ear holes and take a nosedive into the unknown.
That's good. According
to an Idiot. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.
But there are people out there that still seem to exhibit these telekinetic abilities, and governments and stuff have been researching them and trying to prove it or disprove it.
Right. So in the 1800s, there was this group of Chinese children who were said to have special abilities. Now, the Chinese government decided to allow outside scientists to travel to China and conduct experiments with these children. Now, during the experiments, the children supposedly were able to move small objects such as watches and horseflies and photosensitive paper. I don't know why it had to be photosensitive, but it was. And these objects were positioned several meters away, and none of the children were allowed to touch any of the objects prior to the test. Now, the experiments.
I'm sure it was an experience.
It was an experiment. Man, it has been that kind of day. Now, these experiments, the ones I'm talking about now, these were done under blind and double-blind testing conditions. And to the scientists' surprise, the results were repeatable. So they could get the same results each time they tested these children. So technical experts from the Department of Defense were present to ensure that there was no evidence of fraud, and scientists from all over the world witnessed the experiments. So there were multiple accounts and the results could be presented. Now, in 1981, journalist Zoran Zassi published a paper for the Natural Journal entitled "Some Experiments on the Transfer of Objects Performed by Unusual Abilities of the Human Body," describing the experiments on these quote-unquote gifted children. Now, this led to a paper by Dr. Eric Davis, who stated that some researchers felt that there was a need to investigate and construct a new physics, which would unify human consciousness, or what he termed the physics of consciousness. So Dr. Davis is essentially saying, okay, there's something to this, and it falls outside of the realm of known physics. So if we're seeing this and it's truly an ability that we previously have untapped, and it falls outside of what we know as the properties of modern physics, then we've got to go and recalculate everything.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And researchers agreed. Now understand, now Davis isn't necessarily saying this. He's saying that, but in this paper, that because of what these children in China were able to do, that these scientists and researchers were coming forward saying, we need to study this more because we need to make some changes to what we know as the laws of physics, which would now include the human consciousness. So it leads to the question of, were these Chinese children truly gifted? Or, as Adam and I have been talking, had they simply learned to harness the power of their own consciousness? And it's an ability, like I said, like remote viewing, that is considered to be simply another skill that anyone with enough training and practice could perform.
Mm-hmm.
So, but honestly, it really shouldn't come as a surprise that it was Chinese children that were involved in these experiments, because the Chinese government had been investigating the potential of psychokinetic and telekinetic and teleportation abilities since the 1940s.
Wow.
So since the 40s, the Chinese government was saying, we got to look into this. There's a possibility that there's untapped resources in our own mind that we might could use to our benefit.
Well, Eastern societies actually give more credence to that than most of the Western societies.
Absolutely.
Like, scientists in the United States are like, that's a bunch of horse, but
bunch of horse.
I edited myself. That's what you call editing on the fly, Matt. But Eastern cultures have always given more credence to that because, if you look at monks and everything, that's what they do. They harness the powers of their mind. So it makes all sense in the world that the government would try to harness that for their own benefit.
Yeah. And so when you look at Eastern medicine, it's all about the energy within the human body,
mm-hmm.
and balancing that energy to promote healing and well-being.
Right.
When you look at the principles of acupuncture, the whole goal of acupuncture is to release the channels of energy throughout the body,
right,
which promotes self-healing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have pain, if you have dysfunction, then something along the meridians that travel from your head to your feet is blocked and energy cannot flow. And acupuncture helps release that energy. Okay. So that your body can say, all right, now I have this flow. My chi is balanced and I can heal. And
right.
By healing, I mean, in this case, you're out of pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's an ancient concept that is still used today with success. But again, the key here is energy. And that's what the whole basis of telekinesis is that you're using the energy from your mind focused on an object in order to be able to manipulate it, to move it, to actually project a physical force on an object using just the energy from your mind. Once you say that, then everybody's like, oh, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, is it?
Yeah. Why?
I mean, is it really? If you can look at thousands of years of evidence from Eastern medicine that this works, and the basis of it is human energy within the body, then why does this have to be crazy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that talking about acupuncture automatically makes telekinesis legit. I'm just saying you can't believe one thing and just be completely closed-minded to the possibility of another.
Exactly.
I mean, it may or may not work, but you definitely can't close it off. And it wasn't just the Chinese that were involved in researching. They may have been the first, but in the 1960s, the Russians would follow suit. And then in the 70s, the United States would get into the game with Project Stargate, which, Adam and I have discussed in several other episodes. So let's go back over to China. Let's go back over to China because they did a lot of research and a lot of what they did was published in well-known journals, and there was documented evidence of what happened. 1987, in Beijing, China, 30 witnesses inside the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee Training Center. How about working there?
Yeah, right. Another one of those long names.
Uh-huh. And I didn't even finish. There's more words to this name. I'm not going to finish it.
You just tired out.
Yeah. If it took 3 lines on the piece of paper to just say the name of the place, I'm not working on it. But they watched just this eye-popping exhibit by Zhang Baoxing, who was a Chinese quote-unquote super psychic. Now, a sealed medicine bottle was brought in and placed in front of Baoxing. He then concentrated on the bottle, and to the witness's amazement, he moved 44 pills from the bottle without ever opening it. Okay? And then, just for giggles, placed a single piece of candy inside it.
I like this guy.
Okay, yeah. So this is that idea of not just telekinesis, but teleportation, which is the ability to move, to not only move an object, but to generally change its location, even if it has to pass through, a solid barrier.
Right.
Okay. Now, I know that idea, if telekinesis is hard to fathom, that one is almost impossible. But anyway, these studies are quite real. And according to the Chinese government, they were performed under strict scrutiny in order to protect their validity. Now, this idea of being able to move an object with one's mind is one thing. But again, like I said, being able to move an object from one location through another object to the other side is something entirely different. The research performed in China ties this concept of teleportation directly to telekinesis. I mean, this is really a no-brainer. If you get so good at moving stuff with your mind, it's the logical next step. I got to move something through something else. Why not? So it's kind of like doing a stunt. You're like, well, I didn't die.
Yeah.
So let's make this more challenging.
Right.
Oh, well, I can move this across the room. Let's try to move it through something else. Yeah. Put something in the way. And that's exactly what they did. So they were like, well, this guy can do that. What else can he do? See if you can do that. Why not? He'd already shown, enough ability that, he's moving crap around. So now he's able to get it in and out of things without ever opening the container.
Right. And that's a good, like you and I were talking before we went on air, that's a good possible use of harnessing the quantum superposition thing. Because if you're saying, okay, how do I get it from this bottle to outside the bottle? You're not necessarily moving the object through the plastic or glass bottle outside of the bottle. You are just sending the electrical energy field to the one and doing that tap so that it disappears and it congregates into one of its other positions outside of the bottle, whichever position you're able to harness. Right.
And so with the idea that everything is made up of, electrons, it's all a matter of, can we get these electrons to combine with these electrons just enough that we can loosen them up and push, in this case, a pill through the atoms that make up the wall of the container and move it outside of the wall of the container to where it emerges on the other side. So in July of 1990, the Aerospace Medicine Engineering Institute in Beijing conducted even further research, publishing these results in the Chinese Journal of Somatic Science. Using high-speed video recording equipment, scientists state they were able to capture the actual movement of these objects that seemed to meld through the walls of their containers. Objects such as nuts, matches, nails, pills, and even live insects were placed inside sealed envelopes, sealed glass bottles and tubes, and even inside film canisters. Now, if you're under 25, you may have no idea what a film canister is. And if this is the case, you may enjoy my other podcast, which is called Stuff That a Not So Old Guy Will Say and His Children Have No Idea What He's Talking About.
Right?
Because, man, I had film canisters everywhere. I used to keep coins. I used to keep coins in them.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's basically just me and Matt sitting around
going, what the heck is a film canister?
That's Matt. Matt and I just sitting around going, film negatives, VCRs, Sony Walkmans.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've got all the kids sitting there. It's like a Kids React podcast, and they're going, "What? You're old. What is that?
What is that? Why did you ever do that?"
Isn't it much simpler?
Because we had to.
Yeah, isn't it much simpler just to pull up iTunes? And yeah, we didn't have that.
I hate that I have to have these conversations at 45 years old.
Right.
I don't feel that old.
Yeah. Well,
when I look back and I realize the crap that I had to do as a kid and the crap that my kids can do, like, God almighty. But anyway, I digress. In each case of this study, the walls of the container weren't damaged or breached in any way, and the objects remained in their original state, including the living insects. So now we're moving something that's alive through an inanimate object to the other side unscathed.
Right. Which we've talked about, science has talked about teleportation before. We haven't figured it out because you have to regroup all the atoms together. So apparently TK power, telekinesis, TK powers can do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, although the Chinese may have been the first to officially research, experiment, and publish the idea of the human consciousness having an effect on a physical object, they certainly hadn't been alone. Now, Dr. Eric W. Davis, who I mentioned before, he published a research paper commissioned by the U.S. Air Force in 2004 entitled Teleportation Physics Study. Might as well call it what it is. So in the paper, Davis describes a telekinesis experiment performed at the Pentagon. At the Pentagon.
That's taking it seriously.
That's right. Where aerospace engineer Jack Houck taught people to bend spoons and forks with their minds. And this is a common thing. I just really want to know, what do psychics have against cutlery? I mean, what has it ever done to them? They're just bending spoons and stuff left and right. I'm like, what? What's wrong with a spoon? Why you got to torture the spoon?
It's not what it has done. It's what it could do. They're cutting it off before it does anything.
What's it going to do?
Well, we don't know, Matt. We haven't harnessed all the powers of our mind.
But if we bend it, it's rendered useless. But,
exactly.
But this was done in front of multiple scientific experts and high-ranking military officials. So it wasn't like, hey, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna play a game. I'm gonna teach you all how to bend spoons. No, they did this in front of an audience at the Pentagon, and this was commissioned by the United States Air Force. So somebody's taking it pretty seriously. Yeah. But this is also where Davis had reported on the previously mentioned gifted Chinese children, explaining that among the multiple objects that they were able to move was a micro radio transmitter. Now, this is significant because during the teleportation of the transmitter, which was purposefully left on, its signal became very, very weak, indicating that it was in an altered state at the time. So essentially they had this small micro transmitter, and as it moved, it obviously altered its physical state slightly, enough to change what it was able to do, which was transmit that signal. I mean, if you believe it makes sense that would happen. You know, if you've got something that's, you know, in its current physical state, this is what it does, and it's doing it, and then something happens where it's moving, and if you're using the theory that it's changing its subatomic state to go from this position to a position maybe even a few millimeters over, that it has to change state at some point during the movement.
Right. And you could consider that even slightly proof that it's working.
Yeah. I mean, sure. And of course, the Chinese government did. And of course, you know, this led to Davis's paper, which, you know, led to people saying, hey, we may have to rework what we know as physics in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's pretty substantial. I mean, these are people that are way smarter than Adam or I.
Right.
Saying that this is worth considering. You know, not this is a bunch of baloney. They're saying, hey, we've got to look into this because this could change the whole idea of what we know of how the universe works.
Right, exactly. And it's amazing when you think of that.